What's up YouTube? What's up family? Welcome back to another reaction video. Guys, on today's agenda we're going to be diving into Poland had enough of Russia and prepares for war. Yes guys, so if you're new to the channel, I welcome you. If you're returning, welcome back. So in this situation guys, between Poland and Russia, you know, it has grown increasingly tense guys due to geopolitical issues, you know, including Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Now guys, its military activities near NATO's border and Poland's strong support for Ukraine guys. So let's see what they have to say about that. Alright guys, so I'm excited to hear how this one goes. So without any further ado, let's dive right in.
Prepare our forces for full-scale conflict, not an asymmetric type conflict. Those were the words of Polish General Wiesław Kukula during a press conference held in July 2024.
Ooh.
And while Kukula was talking about the need to prepare, Poland's Deputy Defense Minister Paweł Bajda revealed one of the measures it's taking. He announced the bolstering of Poland's eastern border guard from 6,000 troops to 8,000, with the addition of a rear guard of 9,000 soldiers capable of supporting the front guard should a threat emerge. What would that threat be? A Russian invasion through Belarus and Kaliningrad akin to Russian President Vladimir Putin's special military operation in Ukraine? Poland has sent a simple message to Russia. We've had enough and we're ready to fight. In this video, we explore the reasons why Poland is gearing up for a full-scale war with Russia and how it's breaking defense spending records to make sure it's ready. We'll start with why. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022...
Guys, I am against the war, but I just love how, you know, the Poles are united, guys, and they had enough, and they're gonna stand for it, you know. This is why I am excited, man, because if, guys, I'm letting you know that now, if I come to Poland, honestly speaking, I want to join the army, man. Yeah, I want to join the army because you guys had enough. You guys had enough. All right, let's continue watching.
2. The geopolitical community was left scratching its collective head, trying to figure out Putin's specific motivation. Putin claimed that his soldiers were responding to Ukraine being a hostile country, while ignoring the fact that any hostility likely stemmed from his annexation of Crimea in 2014. Russia's president also claimed that Ukraine had a Nazi problem. This wasn't an invasion, he tried to convince the rest of the world. It was a preemptive strike against a country that was emerging as a fascist threat similar to Germany in the late 1930s. All propaganda. All false justifications for a war that came down to one thing: territory. The reality is that Putin is desperate to deliver personal glory unto himself by reclaiming a country that was once part of the Soviet Union. Putin himself is a product of what he likely sees as Russia's glory days. By capturing Ukraine, he takes the first step toward building an empire that he hopes will rival the scope and breadth of the one that existed during the first half of his life. If there were any doubts about his motivation, Putin made his desires clear during his February 2024 interview with Tucker Carlson. Russia's president spent much of the interview rambling about history from his perspective. He contrasted what he called the invention of Ukraine in the 20th century with the 862 establishment of the Russian state, using that historical comparison to reason that Ukraine shouldn't exist at all. It was once part of Russia. It should be part of Russia again. He also claimed that several areas that are now part of Ukraine, particularly in the country's east and south, had no historical connection to Ukraine whatsoever. The Novorossiya, which includes Crimea, is one of those areas. So are Mariupol, Bakhmut, and Kherson, all key targets of the Russian military campaign. Finally, Putin claimed that Ukraine is an artificial state that exists solely due to Stalin's will. The country was created by Soviet leadership of old, the Russian leader argued, and its existence means that Ukraine is occupying land to which it has no historical claim. Through all of this rambling, one message was clear. Putin invaded Ukraine because he believed Ukraine should not exist. It was once merely a part of Russia, and it should be so again. What does any of this have to do with Poland? To Poland, Russia's actions in Ukraine are the sign of a leader who is simply trying to restore Russia to the old days, when it ruled over much of Eastern Europe. Few countries understand what this really means more than Poland. Like Ukraine, Poland has gone through periods of its history when it didn't officially exist as a state. The three partitions of Poland that occurred during the later 18th century offer a perfect example. In 1772, Russia, Austria, and Prussia signed a treaty that partitioned Poland between the three states. At the time, Poland had been devastated by civil war and was in no real position to defend itself. The country lost around 81,500 square miles of territory and about half its population to the treaty, with Russia receiving almost all of the land to the east of the Dnieper and Dvina rivers. A second partition in 1793 transferred much of western Ukraine and parts of Lithuania and Belarus to Russia, both of which were previously parts of Poland. And in 1795, Russia signed a third partition treaty with Prussia and Austria that divided the remaining Polish land, about 83,000 square miles, among the three countries. Poland ceased to exist for over a century after this point. The country was only restored to official statehood again in 1918, following the conclusion of World War I. By now you're already likely seeing parallels with Ukraine. While the stories are different, both countries' histories have seen them ruled by Russia at some point. Putin's proclivity for using distorted historical claims to justify his invasion of Ukraine could just as easily apply to Poland. After all, the country was largely Russian for decades. What's to say Putin wouldn't start a war with Poland, using that historical fact as justification, just as he did in Ukraine? And there's more. Like Ukraine, Poland fell under Soviet rule in the wake of World War II. The early years of this rule were marred by former Soviet leader Joseph Stalin's extensive purges. Between 1945 and 48, Stalin sent between 3 and 6 million Poles to concentration and forced labor camps, almost all being arrested and deported for supposedly harboring anti-communist sympathies. Poland's intelligentsia were driven away or killed in their thousands. By the end of these initial 3 years, nearly 1 million Poles were either dead or on their way to dying. Stalin only made the situation worse by forcing Poland's diminished armed forces into a civil war with the remains of the country's home army and underground non-communist resistance movements. And after all of this death and destruction, Stalin began the mass industrialization of Poland, with the state only regaining its independence when the Soviet Union fell. Again, we see parallels with Ukraine, at least in terms of Poland knowing exactly what it feels like to be under Soviet rule. To many in Poland, Putin's special military operation is one that he hopes to extend to other states. Nearly 50% of Poles said they believe a Russian attack on Poland is likely in February 2024, and the odds are those numbers are even higher today. So Poland has a strange type of kinship with Ukraine. Their histories of statehood and non-statehood are similar, as are the experiences with Russian rule over the centuries. And given Putin's reliance on history as a reason for his special military operation, it's no wonder that Poland is wary of just how far that false justification might carry Russia. Then there are the threats. Putin's modus operandi throughout the war has been to deliver threats to pretty much any country that even hints at doing something the Russian leader won't like. Poland has been far from immune to these attempts to bend it to Putin's will. The Russian president has made few of these threats directly. Instead, they've come from various allies and Kremlin mouthpieces. For instance, November 2023 saw former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev claim that Poland had positioned itself as a dangerous enemy of Moscow. Medvedev, who was little more than a proxy president between 2008 and 12 and reigned mostly for Putin to get around Russia's presidential term limits, wrote extensively about Poland in an 8,000-word essay detailing relations between the two countries. The historical hostilities were front and center. Medvedev claimed that history has more than once delivered a merciless verdict to the presumptuous Poles, while claiming that Russia should now treat Poland as a historical enemy. As the currently serving deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, Medvedev's word holds enough weight for many to assume that anything he says is directly approved by Putin. Medvedev is a Kremlin hawk, according to Reuters, and he used his essay to deliver Putin's threats to Poland via his pen. More threats from a Putin ally came in February 2024. This time it was Vladimir Solovyov, who hosts a popular state television program in Russia and has long been seen as a Kremlin propagandist, who delivered them. In addition to telling the rest of Europe that it would simply not understand Russia's dominance in Europe until Putin decided to smash Europe's face, he turned his focus to Poland. While claiming that he has sympathy for his Ukrainian brothers, acting as though they are simply wayward siblings being set on the right path by Putin, Poland enjoyed no such sympathy. Do the Poles want to be next? They're not Ukrainians, he exclaimed. We will not treat them like brothers. We'll bloody destroy all those cities in an instant without using ground troops. The message was that Russia was holding back in Ukraine. The gloves would be off against Poland. Missile strikes, airstrikes, even the use of nuclear weapons, all were threatened by Solovyov, who also delivered the chilling warning that Russia won't even think twice. Now, Solovyov was likely exaggerating with these comments, but there's no denying that he is a Kremlin mouthpiece. What he says is very much approved by Putin, even if the Russian president doesn't intend to go as far as Solovyov claims. What's clear to Poland is that Russia is making threats, a lot of them, and not only to Poland but its neighbors in the Baltics and NATO as a whole. Combine that with the historical tensions that exist between Russia and Poland, and you have all of the ingredients for a war.
All right, I'm going to pause this right here real quick, guys, because since I mentioned NATO, Poland being a NATO member, guys, and has been fortifying its defense, capabilities, increasing the military spending and modernizing, the armed forces in response to these challenges, Now, in this year, Poland has actively worked to strengthening their military, man. And this is freaking amazing.
Or akin to the one we're seeing in Ukraine. Poland has decided it needs to get ready for a fight. The question is simple. What is Poland doing to prepare for a major war that could go beyond the scale of the Ukraine war? It's breaking records with its defense spending for a start. Toward the end of August 2024, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced his country's 2025 budget. That budget includes record-breaking defense spending that goes beyond the $40.57 billion Poland invested in its military in 2024. That year saw records broken in its own right, with 2025 going even further. Poland will spend $47.81 billion on defense next year. Tusk justified this spending by pointing towards the growth of Poland's defense industries and how this injection of cash would be positive for the country's economy. But it's very clear that preparing for war with Russia is high on the agenda. There's no turning back from it, Poland's prime minister claimed, with the increase meaning that Poland will spend 4.7% of its gross domestic product, or GDP, on its military in 2025.
Wow.
That also places Poland squarely on top of NATO's spending as a proportion of GDP, with Estonia and the US coming in joint second at 3.4%.
Wow.
These budget proposals aren't over the line just yet. Debate is ongoing, with the budget needing to be approved by Poland's parliament, its trade unions, and the country's president Andrzej Duda. But the odds are high that it's going to pass, given that Poland has already committed to spending so much on its military and public sentiment leaning toward the belief that Russia is on the verge of invading. So where is all that money going to go? The East Shield is a likely candidate. In May 2024, Poland announced a $2.55 billion border defense program it dubbed East Shield. Planned for completion by 2028, East Shield will see the country shore up the eastern borders it shares with the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad and Belarus, which is one of Putin's staunchest allies. Poland's defense ministry says that this program will result in the creation of a host of new border defenses, including complex telecommunication systems, several hubs, and fortifications running along the 390 miles of borders it shares with the two pro-Russian territories. The goal is to create a border system that is among the most complex that Europe has to offer. When announcing the project, Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kozyniak-Kamysz claimed, "This makes up one complex system of defensive and deterrent actions. It connects access systems, but we will also purchase and implement modern anti-drone and reconnaissance systems." He went on to hail the project as the largest of its kind since 1945, making it essential to guarding Poland's eastern flank. East Shield is far from the only measure that Poland has taken to protect its eastern borders in recent years. The country's previous government built a 112-mile-long and 18-foot-high fence, complete with sensors and camera systems, across the border it shares with Belarus. That fence was a response to Belarus opening travel agencies in the Middle East, offering the border it shares with Poland as an unofficial route into Europe. The European Union said that the move was designed to create a crisis, with it being one of many examples of the asymmetric warfare techniques Russia and its allies use to create discontent and unrest among its enemies. Poland is wise to Putin's plans. With East Shield, it's going to beef up that already powerful fence with technologies and defenses that go far beyond anything it's used before. That means the border fences will be more than a few thousand troops, along with Dragon's Teeth and similar anti-tank defenses. East Shield will also feature a vast network of surveillance systems, some of which are powered by AI, to detect incoming threats, according to Breaking Defense. There will also be a series of base stations and masts built across the borders, each equipped with acoustic, IMINT, and SIGINT warning and tracking systems that can pick up on radio and electrical signals, such as those emitted by incoming aerial drones. Add several operations centers, again supported by AI, that are integrated with various intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems, and you end up with border defenses that can even automatically activate weapons as soon as they detect a threat. Poland is planning to install 4 aerostats as part of East Shield. essentially hot air balloons configured for military application. These aerostats will float about 2.4 miles in the air and are equipped with various radar and detection systems that allow them to track incoming aircraft and missiles from up to 186 miles away. Throw in more traditional defenses such as anti-tank ditches, wells, and exploding camouflets, and you have a series of measures that offer early warning of an impending invasion and can slow down troops while they're en route. Poland is also preparing to fight directly at its borders, with East Shield also including the construction of a host of new bunkers and ammo stores. Again, the message is clear. If Russia invades, Poland intends to be ready. Poland is also joined by the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania in beefing up border defenses. The latter of these three countries also shares a border with Kaliningrad and has announced the construction of 20 counter-mobility parks, costing almost $20 million, along with the installation of Dragon's Teeth and several other anti-vehicle measures along its borders. Like Poland, the Baltics are NATO members and often see their borders as the first line of defense between Russia and NATO. Poland will have the more high-tech defenses, but make no mistake, the Baltics are likely to join it if a war breaks out. There's more. In addition to the ongoing East Shield project, Poland has also announced Operation Safe Podlasie in July 2024. This is the operation mentioned at the beginning of the video, with Poland committing to more than doubling the assignment of 6,000 soldiers to its border with Belarus. Another 2,000 will be added to the active frontline force, with 9,000 more waiting in the wings and capable of deploying within 48 hours. All of these soldiers will be equipped with individual gear, along with armored vehicles, transporting vehicles, and medical vehicles, according to Kozyniak-Kamysz. Operation Safe Podlasie serves as an extension of the buffer zone Poland created between itself and Belarus over the last few years. The buffer zone has already led to a 50% decrease in illegal attempts to cross the border into Poland, with Operation Safe Podlasie clearly intending to bring the level of unlawful immigration down even further. Again, it's all part of Poland's border initiatives. By strengthening its border, it prevents Belarus, acting as a Russian proxy, from sending illegal immigrants via the Middle East into Poland. The country keeps better track of who's coming in and out, while also deterring Belarus from a direct confrontation by stationing more soldiers along the border. So it's clear that Poland is dedicating a substantial portion of its ever-increasing military budget to shoring up its border defenses. But what else is it doing? How about nearly doubling the size of its standing military? During a July 2023 visit to Konin, which is a small Polish town within just a few short miles of the border with Belarus, Deputy Prime Minister Jarosław Kaczyński offered some insight into Poland's military strengthening. Existing units will be reinforced with new soldiers, he claimed, with Poland also planning on developing 3 new divisions within its military. That growth is already well underway. Poland had an active military of 206,500 personnel at the end of 2023. By July 2024, that military had grown to 216,000 people, placing Poland third out of all NATO countries, only behind Turkey with 481,000 troops and the US with 1.3 million in terms of its sheer number of active personnel. The increasing Polish budget is likely going to fund new recruitment efforts. If Kaczynski is telling the truth, his country's active military should number around 413,000 in a few more years. That's more than enough to handle the combined forces of Belarus's 63,000 soldier-strong active military and the 30,000 or so troops stationed in Kaliningrad. In the latter's case, Ukraine's Kursk invasion may play in Poland's favor, as Putin has been forced to divert soldiers from Kaliningrad to the emerging front line inside Russia. Let's say that despite Poland's efforts, Russian forces managed to break through the East Shield. Already depleted thanks to the many defenses sitting along Poland's borders with Kaliningrad and Belarus, those forces will face a standing army that equals the manpower of the 410,000 army Russia had in Ukraine as of June 2023. Bear in mind that Russia has also lost over 660,000 troops in that war. If it attacks Poland, it's doing so with less equipment and inexperienced soldiers who will be running into the jaws of a country that has far more military power than Ukraine posed back in February 2022. And those soldiers will be fighting a country that's a NATO member. Poland has no intention of attacking Russia. It's building up its military to defend against Putin's aggression. That strengthened military will be joined by the armies of over 30 other countries, all triggered into action by Article 5.
I just love the way that was said. You know, I love the way that was said. So guys, I am going to bring this back. I want to hear this again. I love that.
In a few more years. That's more than enough to handle the combined forces of Belarus's 63,000 soldier-strong active military and the 30,000 or so troops stationed in Kaliningrad. In the latter's case, Ukraine's Kursk invasion may play in Poland's favor, as Putin has been forced to divert soldiers from Kaliningrad to the emerging front line inside Russia. Let's say that despite Poland's efforts, Russian forces managed to break through the East Shield. Already depleted thanks to the many defenses sitting along Poland's borders with Kaliningrad and Belarus, those forces will face a standing army that equals the manpower of the 410,000 army Russia had in Ukraine as of June 2023. Bear in mind that Russia has also lost over 660,000 troops in that war. If it attacks Poland, it's doing so with less equipment and inexperienced soldiers who will be running into the jaws of a country that has far more military power than Ukraine posed back in February 2022. And those soldiers will be fighting a country that's a NATO member. Poland has no intention of attacking Russia. It's building up its military to defend against Putin's aggression. That strengthened military will be joined by the armies of over 30 other countries, all triggered into action by Article 5 of NATO's founding treaty. Putin wouldn't be invading a Poland standing alone. He'd be running into a multifaceted hornet's nest of cooperative forces that bolster an already powerful Polish military. Then there are drones to consider. With Poland's East Shield seemingly focusing on preventing drones from breaking through the border or conducting electronic warfare, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the country has underestimated the attacking utility of drones. It hasn't. Like the rest of the world, it's seen that the Ukraine war has been a coming-out party for drones, with Ukraine using these low-cost, unmanned vehicles to strike Russia in Crimea, Kursk, and even Moscow. In mid-2023, Poland's armament agency, which secures weapons for the country's military, signed a deal with WB Group for a fleet of 1,700 Fly-Eye unmanned aerial systems. These drones are built in Poland, with each Fly-Eye system featuring 4 aerial vehicles that come equipped with thermal imaging cameras and multiple sensors. They're ideal for surveillance in day or nighttime conditions and have been used by the Polish military since at least 2015. Though surveillance-focused, Poland could jerry-rig these drones with bombs, turning them into kamikaze weapons in much the same way that Ukraine has used many of its drones. Come April 2024, and Poland's National Ministry of Defense was also calling for the increased dronization of the country's military. Noting that these unmanned systems offer a host of advantages at a relatively low cost, a Ministry of Defense spokesperson said, "The ministry will intensify the dronization process of the Polish military in specific areas of their use: reconnaissance, combat, and support." Those plans are already underway, as seen with the Fly-Eye acquisitions and the purchase of Bayraktar drones from Turkey back in 2021. In September 2024, WB Group also made a case for the development of long-range strike drones during the 2024 MSPO Defense Industry Show. It also introduced its new Warmate 20, which supposedly has a range of several hundred miles, as well as the Warmate 50, which the company described as operational and capable of traveling even further than the Warmate 20. There's no denying that Poland falls behind Russia in the drone game. That's partially a consequence of Putin's special military operation. Russia has invested heavily in drones since Ukraine showed how effective these unmanned vehicles can be. Poland is playing catch-up.
Get out of here, guys!
With its record-breaking budget, it has the money to invest heavily into drones as it strengthens its border and ups its active military numbers. All of this is in the name of preparation for Putin's forces. And that brings us to another area into which Poland has invested substantially over the last few years: heavy military equipment. When Putin invaded Ukraine in February 2022, he did so knowing that Ukraine didn't have a huge amount of heavy equipment that it could use to fend off Russia's forces. Russia had thousands more tanks, artillery systems, rocket launchers, and aerial assets. That equipment discrepancy is the main reason Russia made such quick advances during the early weeks of the invasion, getting within touching distance of taking Kyiv before brave Ukrainian resistance fighters started pushing them back. Were it not for the constant military aid that's flown into Ukraine in the years since that initial invasion attempt, the country would likely have crumbled under Russia's pressure. Poland has no intention of allowing Putin to launch an invasion similar to the one he attempted in Ukraine. It's bolstering the number of tanks, rockets, and howitzers it has available so it can hit Russia hard on the ground if it ever tries to cross over into Polish territory. Among the many purchases the Polish military has made over the last couple of years are 288 South Korean Chunmoo artillery rocket launchers. These multiple launch systems are vehicle-mounted and can be transported at speeds of up to 55.9 miles per hour. They're also versatile. Base units can hold up to 20 130mm K-33 unguided rockets, each having a range of around 18.5 miles. If Poland wants to pack more of a punch with its new missile systems, it can also use them to fire up to 6 227mm rockets for up to 27.9 miles, or a pair of 400mm guided rockets that can travel up to 248 miles. The Chunmoo can even fire a 600mm ballistic missile over a distance of 180 miles. These 288 rocket systems cost $5.8 billion, and they'll be worth every penny to Poland because of their range and multiple firing options. They're also just the start of Poland's military equipment spending. June 2022 also saw Poland buy 1,000 K2 tanks from South Korea, with the first 180 of those tanks arriving in Warsaw in December of the same year. Each is a modern main battle tank crewed by 3 people and equipped with a 120mm L55 smoothbore gun capable of rattling off 10 rounds per minute. Auto detection and tracking systems are built into the tank, along with thermal imaging systems and laser rangefinders. Add powerful explosive reactive armor, composite armor, and nuclear, biological, and chemical protection systems into the mix, and you get a tank that's far superior to most of the Soviet-era tanks Russia has fielded in Ukraine. Poland is even getting ready to manufacture these tanks in-house, with Kosniak Kamysz saying that South Korea is committed to provide all technical information as soon as possible so that Polish arms plants can prepare for the production of K2 tanks in Poland. More South Korean spending was confirmed in October 2024 when WB Group announced a newly signed contract with South Korean firm Hanwha Aerospace to build a missile production facility in Poland. This facility will be capable of manufacturing several thousand missiles for Poland's new Chunmoo rocket artillery launchers every year. Here we see signs of Poland making sure it doesn't get caught in the same trap as Ukraine. It's only now, over 2 years into the war with Russia, that Ukraine is getting to the point where it's capable of building its own drones and missiles. Poland wants to be able to do that from the moment that Russia invades. It's buying huge quantities of weapons in bulk and has clearly established solid relationships with South Korea's defense industry. But it's also putting the appropriate measures in place to ensure it can build more and ramp up production quickly if Putin invades. These purchases are just the tip of the iceberg that extends far below the metaphorical ocean's surface. August 2024 saw Poland buy 48 Patriot air defense missile batteries from the United States, giving it 6 battalions of these powerful weapons. Ukraine only has a handful of Patriots, but it's proven time and again that the missiles the system fires are exceptional at taking out aerial threats. Add 644 Patriot missiles to Poland's spending spree, and the country will be far better equipped to deal with Russia's aerial threat than Ukraine. And that's the point. Ukraine has provided the rest of the world with plenty of lessons on how to fight against Russia. It's also shown the type of tactics Putin uses in a war, and through trial and error combined with great strategy, has demonstrated how to overcome Putin's meat grinder approach. Poland has been paying attention. If a Russian invasion comes, it'll be so much better equipped than Ukraine was to deal with the early stages. After that, it'll fortify, while also relying on its NATO allies to combine with its military to decimate Putin's forces. Poland has had enough of Putin. There'll be no repeat of the Ukraine war in Poland. Instead, Putin will find himself fighting a technologically advanced country that's guarding its borders, preparing for all of his tricks, and understands how to counter almost every single strategy the Russian president has. But what do you think about Poland's preparations? Is the combination of spending on military strengthening and enhanced border defenses enough to fend off Putin's invading forces? Would a Russian invasion of Poland trigger World War III due to Article 5 of the NATO treaty? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching the video. Now go and check out why Russia is terrified of Poland's military power, or click this other video instead.
I will sure do check it out. Wow, you know, it's amazing how Poland has actively worked to strengthening its military, you know, and the country aims to build one of the most powerful armies, guys, in Europe, focusing on acquiring the modern equipments, you know, such as tanks, helicopters, air defense systems, you know. And additionally, Poland has hosted NATO's exercises and build alliances within the organizations to ensure collective security. This is amazing. This is amazing, you know, and I am so happy, so glad to see that they are prepared, and not even just that, man. They want to do certain things on their own, you know, build their own rockets, build their own drones, man, this is amazing. I love you guys. I love you guys. Alright guys, this is where I come to the end of this. You know what I love when they said that they're not these things is just to defend themselves against Russia. Yes. So, guys, leave your thoughts in the comment section. You know, this is where I come to the end of this reaction, but I will be back some more. So sit back, relax, and see what I got coming up again from Poland. Alright, so have yourselves a wonderful day. Stay safe out there, guys. I'm gonna leave the original link down in my description so you guys can go take a look. Feel free to leave suggestions, engage with the audience, because you know that's what we're all about on the channel. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and your families. So this is where I come to the end. I'll see you back. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Stay safe out there, guys, and share the love, not the hate. Peace out. Till next time. I love y'all.